Hello, Adam Eason here, back for another episode of Piecemeal, where we take a phrase apart to see how it was put together. Today, we're going to take a look at the first 12 bars of Alban Berg's lied Dem Schmerz, sein Recht, written as part of his Op.2 in 1909. Like our last phrase from Mel Bonis's cello sonata, we're going to find a good helping of extended and non-functional harmony, but Berg ventures in a different direction than Bonis. We'll also look at how complex harmony can be created through chromatic voice leading, and how sometimes a chord is just, a big stack of notes. Alright, let's get started. While I've been starting these videos with the melody, for the first 6 bars I'm going to start with a harmonic analysis. These measures are held together by 2 pedal points, a D in the bass and an F natural in octaves. The harmony is filled in with an A, bringing us into a solid D minor chord over bar 2. Over the course of bars 3 and 4, the A in the right hand begins to ascend, first to a B flat, then to a B natural, then to a C, and wait a minute, is that a line cliché?
A line cliché is a stepwise line, either descending or ascending, that moves against a single stationary chord. It allows the composer to sustain a particular chord while adding some movement and interest to an otherwise boring and static progression.
Well, how about that? But Berg doesn't settle with one voice doing a line cliché. That's not quite enough angst. So he does 2 line clichés at the same time. A second ascending chromatic line starts in the left hand, harmonizing in seconds and sevenths against the first line. This pulls the chords from D minor to B flat 7 to a B half diminished 7. At measure 5, Berg keeps the D, A, and one of the F naturals constant and moves the other up to an F sharp. The B also moves up to a C, creating a super crunchy D major sharp 9. The sharp 9 resolves to a regular 9 on beat 4 of the 5th bar. I want to use this moment as a good example of how resolution is kind of a relative concept. In the time of, say, Mozart, any kind of extended chord would be a dissonance requiring resolution. For highly dissonant music, though, we hear some extended chords as more dissonant than others. So the resolution of a chord might move to another which is, in the abstract, also dissonant. But since it's less so than the one that came before it, we hear it as being more of a release. Context matters quite a bit. Filling in the melody, we see the voice is actually just outlining 2 key notes of each chord, the F pedal point and the moving chromatic line below it. There's quite a lot of space between statements of a simple rhythmic motive, a quarter note, eighth note group on the second half of each bar. There's also a subtle switch at the end of the 5th bar, where the melody ascends from the chromatic line to the pedal point, allowing the voice to prepare for the sharp 9. The voice landing on the downbeat for the first time increases the emphasis given to this dissonance. They then resolve to the regular 9, with a keyboard giving pitch support for intonation. The texture in these bars is also sparse and simple. The bass rocks slowly between the D and the A, and the harmony similarly rocks between the pedal point and the chromatic line. At measure 5 and 6, the slowing of the accompaniment rhythm, along with a sustaining chord over 2 bars, helps reinforce the feeling of an arrival. Worth considering, the dynamics have stayed at pianissimo and pianissimo, creating a weird feeling of stasis in spite of the line cliché's tendency to create a feeling of movement. Continuing with the harmony, the bass changes for the first time, moving up to an E flat. This choice is made right when an otherwise normal chord is played, an A7. The resulting chord is an ambiguous sounding E flat 7 flat 5, ambiguous because it could just as easily be an A7 flat 5 in second inversion. Either way, Berg uses this chord in a traditionally dominant function, following it with the D7 we heard before. The next 2 measures speed up the harmonic rhythm, but still alternate between the same 2 chords. Melodically, the piano and voice stay together. The D sharp of measure 6 prefigures the E flat coming in measure 7, leading the melody up to an F sharp. That arrival marks another strong dissonance against the 7 flat 5, mirroring the dissonance from measure 5. The F sharp resolves to an F, which is held over into the same D7 sharp 9 from before. Berg resolves it in the same way, but only briefly, repeating the motive D sharp, E, F sharp, F, E. This builds momentum for the first climax of the song, which is this. Yeah, so let's take a closer look at this thing. Berg helps clarify the harmony a bit in the right hand, a perfectly normal G7. The big flourish in 64th notes arpeggiates that same chord, but includes a sharp 5 as well. This is the second time Berg takes a traditional chord and changes the flavor by altering the 5th. Underneath all of that, though, is a C sharp in the bass. This is arrived at by chromatic motion and marks another alteration of the 5th in the opposite direction. That, or you could say it's a sharp 4, but I'm not sure Berg was counting necessarily. He has other plans for the bass, which we'll get to. Then, on top of all of that, the voice ascends first by 5th and then by step to a B flat, which in this context would be a sharp 9. To give a sense how absurd this would be when written in chord notation, we have a G7, sharp 4, sharp 5, sharp 9 chord. Luckily, that sharp 9 resolves to a regular 9, which is one less symbol to put in your chord analysis. It's all pretty extra, but then we are talking about Berg here. The bass from this point is actually quite straightforward. It follows your run-of-the-mill circle of 4ths and 5ths. Above the F sharp, he harmonizes with another 7 sharp 5, and above the B, he harmonizes with the comparatively simple half-diminished chord with a 9th added for spice. The melody continues to include any notes other than what is implied by the harmony until it finally repeats the descending step motive and resolves to a B in the 12th bar. This brings us to the end of the phrase for today. Whew, that was a mouthful. But it's one of those things where the details are intense, but the underlying process arriving at those details is, well, relatively simple. There are a lot of pedal tones held against chromatic lines, and dissonances are arrived at by step in the melody. Also, while there are a lot of gnarly extended chords, they are all derived from traditional triads, and the spice either comes from stacking more thirds over the root, as 7ths or 9ths, or by tinkering with the 5th. In addition, don't underestimate the power of the line cliché. I know the name is kind of not flattering, and it certainly can be a cliché, but it's still a powerful tool. Composers use it for a reason. Alright, that's it for today. Thanks for sticking with me through some thorny analysis. If you learned anything, mash that like button an odd number of times, and subscribe for more analyses and sometimes my own compositions. Let me know if I screwed anything up in the comments. Alright, see you next time.